Shalom Aleichem and welcome to Machim Le'Ra Online Smicha. This time of year, it might actually be a little noisy hearing this year. I'm sitting in a base medrash in 770, and it's this time of year everybody's preparing for Pesach and learning Hilchos Pesach, and so too the women are preparing for the Inyani of Pesach. One of the things that comes up is the menu. You know, we make such a big issue of the matzah, the maror, which is rightfully so. But Shulchan Aruch is also one of the simanim of the Seder. We have to have Simchas Yom Tov have a proper menu, proper Simchas Yom Tov. So the question is, when we talk about the menu for Shulchan Aruch, is there any specific halachas connected with it? Obviously, what you should eat, what you should not eat. That's a lot of things people haven't. In the family tradition, family minhagim, what Shulchan Aruch says, not how to eat. The Shulchan Aruch says don't overeat because you want to make sure there's some space left over for the afikoman. From one hand, the afikoman has to be eaten ala soiva. Ala soiva means you're satisfied, you're full. But from the other hand, you can't just push it in. You have to, that would also be not right. So you have to eat a Sudas Yontif, a nice Sudas Yontif, but leave over some space for the Apikaiman. Now, and Shulchan Aruch also says make sure not to have too many dips, because in the Mamanish Kana we say that we only have a certain amount of dips in the night of Pesach, and some have the minig of eating the eggs during the Shulchan Aruch, and there's many reasons for that. But I'm going to zero in on one item. The main course, the meat item, the meat course. Is there any restrictions or minhagim about the meat? In other words, meat, chicken, broiled, baked, cooked. Is there anything Shulchan Aruch has to say about that? Now, to understand this, you have to start that the Korban Pesach was brought out of Pesach Acher Chatzos, and the Korban Pesach was eaten the night of the Seder. So we cannot do anything that looks very close to the way the Korban Pesach was done, because then it would look as if we're celebrating and sacrificing the Pesach and doing it exactly as it was, and we're not allowed to do that. So let's chisel it down to when is it very similar to the way Korban Pesach is, and perhaps that should not be done, and versus if it's not so similar. First of all, the Korban Pesach was brought from the izim and the kvasim. The animal that was used for the Korban Pesach was either a goat or a sheep, shepsela. So right away, if you're not using the meat from those animals, it's already different. The Korban Pesach was roasted. So if you're cooking, it's also not close to how it was in the Korban Pesach. So that is what we're trying to be concerned. So there are those places that have a minig that you don't eat any roasted meat on the nights of Pesach. Remember, the nights of Pesach is when the korban was eaten. Whereas by day, most of the people you're allowed to eat roasted meat by day. Okay? However, the minig, the Alter Rebbe clearly says in Siman Taf Ayin Vav Sif Aleph, the minig is that people do not eat roasted meat. Even though there are different places, the accepted custom is on the nights of Pesach you do not eat roasted meat. Now, that is all meats. When you move it up a notch, meat of a goat or meat of a shepsela, over there especially it's a problem, because that becomes much closer to how it was in the roasted goat or roasted shepsela. Is very, very close to how it was in the base of Mikdash, and that's you for sure not. So if you're eating chicken is definitely not the korban. So then chicken is not a problem. I'm sorry. If you're eating chicken, because chicken is tol and shchita. Sorry, that was a mistake. It has the similarity that's not a food item that you could eat without shchita, so it's similar to how the korban was done, at least in that fact. Roasted chicken, the Alter Rebbe says in Siman Taf Ayin Vav Sif Gimel, if you're in a place, and that's what became a common practice, that we don't eat roasted meat, you will also not eat roasted chicken. Things that are not roasted, things that don't need shchita, like fish, or eggs. So there are many people that the egg on the kaira they do roasted. They could eat it because it's too far apart from how to make a mistake and compare it to the Korban Pesach. So that's the general understanding. So if you're cooking Korban Pesach was not allowed to be cooked. How about a pot roast? So what is a pot roast? It's in a pot, but it's roasted. It's not water. So the question becomes: if pot roast is a din of tzli that we don't eat it because we don't eat tzli roasted on Pesach, or is it considered like cooking? So the Alter Rebbe says it's best to be machmer unless it's very, very much needed. Now, what's interesting, because of that, if somebody has a craving or somebody decides he wants to eat liver on Pesach, liver, the only way you eat it, you're able to eat it, is if you roast it first. So roasting liver would be a problem because it's accepted not to eat roasted meat. The only discussion is what happens if meat that was roasted and afterwards it was cooked. Does it have a status of a cooked food, a cooked meat, which it could be much easier, or not? And this depends if it was roasted or cooked before Shabbos or after Shabbos. This is one of the reasons why the Zroya, the Minhag Chabad, is that because we roast it, so it shouldn't look so anywhere near the Korban Pesach, we remove all the meat from the Zroya and we don't eat it, because eating a roasted piece of meat is very close to how it was in the Beis Hamikdash. So let's summarize it. If your menu calls for fish, eggs, or anything else, no problem. That you could serve anyway. If your menu calls for something that needs shchita, the minhag is that we stay away. We do not eat them roasted, but cooked is different. It's very interesting to note that there are those that say that the same conversation we're having about the night of Pesach, it also applies on Pesach Sheni. Because on Pesach Sheni, for those who didn't bring the korban on the original time, are bringing it now, and they also have to eat it that way. So there are some that also apply it for Pesach Sheni, but it's not well known, and and it wasn't spread by all communities. So this is just some people have that many.